You might notice that this is a little bit of a different setting, and the reason is simple. I'm on a road trip. I've come to Glen Innes for a few days to catch up with an old mate. Peter Teschner owns this place where I am today, and I'm going to take you for a little tour of his shed, and we're going to talk through some of the things that he's done in the bike trade over the years. And I think it's interesting, and I hope you agree that he's a fascinating character who knows a lot about bikes. Peter Teschner is a man of many qualities. He's been a good friend for many years. He's a softly spoken man with a lot of ideas and a bundle of energy. He's never one to seek out a headline. What we're going to do is look back at some of the things he's made over the years. I hope you enjoy this little tour of Peter Teschner's shed.
They're actually tapered towards the front.
Okay.
So when you tighten up,
Yeah.
the nut can't climb up a hill. So you don't need to worry about the adjuster or anything in here. You just see how all of this all fits together and it doesn't clamp up against each other. It's already got a whole system in there. Rather than squashing the dropout, it no longer can squash the dropout because we've got all alloy in there.
Okay.
So this jig can do both disc brake and standard rim brake.
Okay, mate, you going to show me around?
Yeah, sure.
You know, man, how about you just give us a quick intro as to how you found yourself here and what we could potentially see over a series of videos.
1991 I started TI Sports actually making titanium frames. In actual fact, the very first titanium frame is still sitting up there on the rack, and about 2 years later I moved into aluminium with Easton Aluminium and became their distributor.
Just talk to me a little bit about Scandium. You were sort of one of the pioneers, is that a fair comment?
In the use of it, yes. Easton in about 1999 brought out a Scandium-based tube set. Some people wanted to call it a Scandium tube set. In actual fact, it had 1%, less than 1% of Scandium in the alloy. But incredibly, it refined the grains and allowed a thinner wall, plus increased the strength by about 25%. Some may remember the infamous crash of Mick Rogers down in Adelaide at the Tour Down Under, when there's a gigantic crash and it sounded like a bullet shot going off, and that was the high tensile frame snapping rather than bending, I guess you'd say. Worked with Easton to develop some sizings and all that sort of thing, and then brought about a real change in the high-end aluminium side of it.
When you talk about change in sizing, you're talking about wall thicknesses?
Yeah, wall thicknesses, like for example, where you'd build a 7005 or a 6061 tube set with about a 1 mil wall thickness in the middle of the tube for the top tube, we were down to 0.8 of a mil.
Okay, and what we're only talking about weight saving, or what else?
Both weight saving and strength.
What about comfort? That's not really a forte of yours, is it? You build the bikes to go fast and be stiff.
Yeah, that's true, but I guess the thing that I most enjoy hearing from someone is when they hang their bike up after a ride, the thing they say is, "Oh, I love my bike." So I guess it's 6 one and a half and dozen of the other. Is it stiff and it makes it go really nice and fast, or is it comfortable and you can take it easy? As a custom frame builder, you actually build that into a bike. Look, carbon's obviously getting lighter and lighter and stronger, but there is only so far you can go. And I think that carbon alone in its layup can only go so far, but a mixture of a possible veil in between or something like that increases the chance of less chance of interlaminar delineation or spreading and that sort of stuff is the way to go. But I think you can only go so thin. I think the current craze of trying to get under 600 grams and 700 grams and all those sorts of things, and admittedly you can go a lot lower at that, but I think you're going to lose out on something eventually. My philosophy for production bikes is around 800, 820, you know, somewhere around like that. I think you can build a frame that will last you and also be comfortable and to ride. But then it's how you design the bike in terms of head angles, fork brakes, chainstay lengths, seat tube angles, as whether it's going to be a little bit more comfortable.
With that intro out of the way, we'll find out a lot more as we're talking through the bikes, but let's have a little peek through some of the back catalogue, shall we?
Okay, not a problem. The very, very first titanium frame, as you can see, sort of steel type diameters in the tubes and those sorts of things. Again, the very, very first aluminium one I built under the old TI Sports label, which I then changed to Teschner in about 1999. So this was the very, very first frame. You can see it's had its days, it's been knocked around. I should maybe restore it, but as you can see, the old inch steerer, small tubes. This was probably the very first Easton tube frame made in Australia, about 1993, 94 probably.
Although we're used to it now, it was quite innovative at the time.
Yes.
You, from the very word go, you were trying to get internal cabling and the like.
Yes, that's what we did. The other thing too is, you know, who'd ever want a funny weld on your bike frame? So we actually did a lot of hand cleaning, and hand cleaning was polishing and etc. Sort of wasted a lot of your time until we then learned how to torch dress, and that was the second pass weld, which actually flowed the weld out, and we never ever had to worry about doing that again. But as you can see, the old steel days came in aluminium, dimple the chainstays, stress riser straight away, welded in water bottle biddens, as I said before, inch head tube, drill a nice big hole through the middle of the down tube. Sorts of things you mightn't want to do these days with some of the other material that you actually have. But as you can see, 27.2 seat post.
Okay.
Back to the old days.
Yeah.
We could do an aluminium frame in 8 hours compared to a couple of days.
Oh, 8 hours.
8 hours for an aluminium frame, yeah. So, virtually the same size, hardly any difference. 1154.
So the year?
1994, 93, 94. 93, yeah, 93.
Okay.
So we've got 1153, so we've taken, what, 500 grams or 400 or 500 grams out of it.
To be clear, around that time the steel were going at about 1700 grams.
Yeah, probably, yeah, around about that, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And look, there's still plenty of steel manufacturers around. Plenty of those people who want an old school frame that looks great.
Okay. And how did Easton vary from, let's say, Dedachai, who was doing a little bit of aluminium supply then?
Look, back in those days, I actually had the Easton, Dedachai and Columbus distributorship for the 3 different tube sets. And I must admit, out of all of those, with respect to Columbus and with respect to Dedachai, I had a much better relationship with Easton, much more personal, better service level, all those sorts of things. Made some really good friends there. Jim Felt was working there in those days,
Okay.
so I know Jim quite well, plus a few other people. And but I enjoyed the Easton one a lot better, and certainly the acceptance of Easton probably more from the fact that they had their arrows and they had their baseball bats and all those sorts of things. People could actually refer back to that and feel a bit more comfortable with it. A couple of years after I started making the frames for Easton, there were discussions about me actually moving to America to set up a factory for Easton to build their frames.
Right.
An Easton branded frame. But they finally decided they can't serve 2 masters, one to builders and one for himself, and then that got squashed, and so they just kept making tubing. These days, Easton don't make any tubing anymore. They've sold everything off. So they're only making arrows and baseball bats and javelins these days, I believe.